In the stillness of dawn, when the air is cool and the rising sun filters through the canopy, a faint shimmer drifts between the branches. At first it seems like nothing more than morning light caught in dew, but as the camera tilts and the focus sharpens, the illusion resolves into something extraordinary. Suspended in the half-light is a vast golden net, strung delicately between trunks, branches and leaves. It glows not with metallic pigment, but with living architecture, a structure spun overnight by a single spider. This is the web of the golden silk orb-weaver, one of nature's most gifted engineers, and it is more than a simple trap. It is a carefully tuned machine that bends the laws of physics, drawing prey not only with glue and geometry, but also with invisible currents of electricity. The orb-weaver herself is waiting at the hub. Her body gleams with yellow markings that echo the luminous sheen of her silk, a camouflage that both hides her against sunlit foliage and anchors her role as the maker of this golden snare. With each leg resting on carefully chosen radial threads, she feels not just the vibrations of the forest, but the subtle tremors of the web itself. This network of threads is more than an extension of her body. It is her instrument of survival, her sensory system, and her energy investment. And as the morning warms, it becomes her invitation to the insects of the forest. To understand how this web works, one must follow its construction. The orb-weaver begins not with the circular masterpiece, but with a framework. She stretches a bridge line across two distant points, often testing the wind until a strand of silk catches and clings. From there, she drops a vertical line to create a Y-shaped anchor, the skeleton upon which the entire wheel will depend. Slowly she adds radii, each line stretching from the hub like the spokes of a wheel. Only then does she begin the spirals, first a temporary scaffold, and later the final capture spiral laid with sticky silk. The design is not only visually elegant, it is structurally precise. Each strand balances tension, strength and elasticity, distributing impact so that the force of a flying insect does not shatter the whole construction. But the golden orb-weaver takes this design one step further. Her silk is not inert. Studies have shown that the threads carry electric charges. Tiny particles of dust and pollen clinging to the bodies of insects also carry static electricity from their flight. When these creatures draw near, the charged silk exerts a faint but measurable pull, altering their trajectory by fractions of a millimeter, just enough to bend wings, shift course, and guide the insect into the trap. What might look like an accidental collision is in fact the culmination of physics being subtly hacked. The spider has learned to weaponize electricity without ever knowing the equations that govern it. There is also the question of color. The orb-weaver's web is not transparent. Its threads glimmer with a golden hue, rich enough to be visible to the human eye, but even more alluring to insects. Many flying insects are drawn to ultraviolet patterns, the same signals they use to find flowers. The golden silk reflects ultraviolet light in a way that mimics these signals, creating a visual lure in addition to the invisible electrical one. To a bee, moth or butterfly moving through the undergrowth, the web does not appear as a barrier, but as a point of attraction, something bright and promising to investigate. In this way, the orb-weaver transforms a passive snare into an active beacon, increasing her odds in a forest where every meal must be earned. As the sun rises higher, the dew on the threads begins to glisten. Each droplet acts like a miniature lens, refracting light in shifting patterns that further enhance the illusion of flowers and nectar. To human eyes, the web now seems magical, a suspended constellation of liquid pearls strung on golden wires. To the spider, however, this beauty is practical. Every bead magnifies the visibility of the web in one spectrum or another, broadening the range of creatures that might stumble toward it. What seems ornamental is in fact strategic. When prey strikes, the story shifts from physics to behavior. A fly, brushing too close, is drawn off course by the silk's electric charge and collides with the sticky spiral. Instantly, the geometry of the web reveals its purpose. The spiral stretches rather than breaks, converting the insect's kinetic energy into controlled vibration. These vibrations ripple along the radial lines and reach the spider at the hub, where her legs are waiting. She can tell by the frequency whether the movement comes from wind, falling leaves, or living prey. If it is the latter, she reacts with astonishing speed. The orb-weaver rushes forward, moving directly along the radii, never touching the sticky spirals. Her legs are tipped with fine claws that grip the silk without getting trapped. In seconds, she reaches the struggling insect and delivers a bite that paralyzes it. Often, she wraps it in fresh silk, a smooth cocoon that prevents escape and preserves the meal for later. The prey's frantic beating only tangles it deeper, each wing stroke binding it tighter until it is silent. The spider then either consumes her catch immediately or stores it against the next hunger. Yet even as she hunts, she must think of maintenance. A web in the forest is vulnerable to weather, falling debris, or accidental damage. After a storm, the golden orb-weaver does not simply abandon her structure. She eats the damaged threads, recycling the proteins of her silk into her own body, and then rebuilds the web with new lines spun from her glands. This recycling is essential, for silk is costly to produce. Every molecule represents energy consumed in the form of prey. By reclaiming her silk, she closes the loop of her investment, ensuring that nothing is wasted. In ecological terms, this efficiency is the secret to her survival. The orb-weaver's strategy demonstrates a principle that recurs throughout evolution, the ability to turn physical laws into allies. What appears to be instinctive weaving is in fact the distillation of countless generations of trial and error, spiders that succeeded because their webs caught slightly more prey than their competitors. The golden orb-weaver does not understand electricity or optics, but her web embodies both, fine-tuned by selection. It is an object lesson in how natural engineering arises, not from conscious design, but from the relentless shaping of survival. In a broader ecological sense, her web plays a role beyond her own hunger. It regulates insect populations, capturing herbivores that would otherwise strip leaves unchecked. It also provides food for scavengers. Birds, ants, and even other spiders sometimes steal prey from the orb-weaver's snare, creating a small economy of energy transfer centered on a few threads of silk. In this way, the golden web becomes a node in the larger system of the forest, its threads connecting not just twigs and leaves, but the fates of many species. As the day lengthens and heat builds, the spider may retreat to a shaded corner of her frame, her legs still resting on taut strands so that every vibration reaches her. She is patient. Hours may pass without a catch, yet the web continues to work silently, bending light, channeling charge, waiting for chance to bring another insect into its grasp. When evening falls and the air cools again, she may repair what is frayed, eat what remains, and prepare for the night's spinning. For as long as she survives, the cycle repeats: construct, lure, capture, consume, rebuild. The golden silk orb-weaver reminds us that survival is not only about strength or speed, but about the mastery of hidden forces. Her web is both a trap and a lesson, an elegant demonstration that even the smallest creatures can shape the fundamental laws of physics to their advantage. In the shimmer of her silk, under the first light of the sun, we glimpse the ingenuity of evolution itself, a living machine suspended between the branches, golden and eternal, waiting in silence for the next visitor to drift too close. The morning air in a summer meadow hums with the movement of wings. Above the grasses and shrubs, blossoms open to the warmth of the sun, their petals unfolding like soft satellites turned toward the light. The hum is not uniform. It shifts in tone, rising and falling, a layered chorus of insects arriving to feed, to court, and to pollinate. But among these voices, there is one sound that does not blend into the background. It is sharper, more resonant, a buzz that seems to pulse with mechanical precision. This is the song of the carpenter bee, a deep-bodied pollinator whose methods are unlike those of its kin. Where honeybees drift from flower to flower, collecting nectar and dusting themselves with loose grains, the carpenter bee takes a more forceful approach. It does not wait for pollen to fall. It shakes it free. On the surface of a tomato flower, a bee clings with powerful jaws. Its legs brace against the petals, anchoring the body in place. The target is not the sweet nectar hidden deeper within, but the anther, the pollen-bearing organ that holds its treasure tightly sealed. Unlike open anthers that release grains freely into wind or onto visiting insects, these are poricidal, meaning the pollen is locked inside tiny pores at the tip. To reach it requires a special key, and the carpenter bee carries that key not in its jaws but in its muscles. By contracting its thoracic flight muscles in rapid bursts, the bee produces vibrations of extraordinary precision. The frequency is tuned not for flight but for resonance, matching the natural vibration of the anther itself. The effect is similar to striking a bell at its exact note. The anther begins to tremble, and as it does, pollen is shaken loose, spilling out in a golden dust. To the eye, it looks like a sudden puff of smoke. To the bee, it is a payday of protein-rich particles, harvested in seconds from a source that no ordinary nectar forager could access. This process is called buzz pollination, or sonication, and it is one of the more fascinating hacks of the insect world. Without it, many plants would remain underpollinated. The carpenter bee is not alone in this skill. Bumblebees and some solitary bees perform it as well, but carpenter bees are among the most accomplished, and their size gives them the strength to shake even stubborn blossoms. The technique is not without cost. Vibrating at such intensity consumes energy, and it exposes the bee to predators while it remains fixed to a flower. Yet the benefits outweigh the risks, for the nutritional gain is substantial. Pollen is not only a transport medium for plant genes, it is the protein foundation of bee survival, feeding larvae and sustaining colonies. In controlled experiments, scientists have compared flowers exposed to wind or visited by honeybees with those visited by carpenter bees. The difference is dramatic. Without sonication, only a fraction of pollen is released, often less than 1 in 10 grains. With vibration, the yield can increase 5-fold or more. Entire crops depend on this advantage. Tomatoes, blueberries, cranberries, and eggplants all produce poricidal anthers, and without buzz-pollinating bees, their productivity plummets. In greenhouses where honeybees fail, farmers sometimes import bumblebees to do the work. Yet in the wild, carpenter bees are equally important, ensuring that both wild plants and cultivated ones achieve reproduction. The mechanics of the vibration are worth examining more closely. When the bee clamps its jaws onto an anther, it transfers the force of its thoracic muscles directly into the flower. The indirect flight muscles that normally oscillate wings now operate in a different mode, producing soundless tremors. This coupling between head and thorax is what gives carpenter bees their efficiency. The energy is not wasted on air or wing beats. It goes straight into the plant, turning the flower itself into an instrument. The resonance is so fine-tuned that each species of bee often targets specific flowers with which it has co-evolved. The relationship is mutualistic. The plant receives precise delivery of pollen to stigmas, and the bee secures a concentrated harvest. From an evolutionary perspective, this behavior reveals how adaptation operates not only on individual species, but on the interactions between them. Flowers that developed poricidal anthers excluded casual visitors, ensuring that only specialist pollinators gained access. This prevented waste and increased the accuracy of pollen transfer. In turn, bees that mastered vibration gained an exclusive food source, free from competition. Over countless generations, this feedback loop refined both partners, shaping morphology and behavior into a system that now dominates entire ecosystems. Carpenter bees themselves are striking insects, larger than honeybees, with dark metallic bodies that shimmer blue or green in sunlight. Their wings move with a deep droning pulse, and their mandibles are powerful enough to bore into wood, where they construct their nesting galleries. Unlike honeybees, they do not live in large colonies but in smaller family groups, often reusing tunnels year after year. Their solitary or semi-social habits make them less conspicuous but no less vital. Each female tends her brood directly, provisioning tunnels with pollen balls upon which larvae feed. Every buzzed flower contributes not just to agriculture, but to the survival of a next generation of bees hidden deep within timber. The ecological ripple effects extend far beyond bee and flower. Birds that feed on fruits benefit from successful pollination. Mammals that browse shrubs depend on the abundance of berries. Even predators that feed on herbivores trace their sustenance back to the work of pollinators. By shaking loose grains of pollen, carpenter bees indirectly support entire food webs, binding together species across trophic levels. To see one bee on one flower is to glimpse only a fragment of the cascade that flows outward into the landscape. There are vulnerabilities, however. Habitat loss reduces the availability of both nesting sites and floral resources. Pesticides can disrupt the neuromuscular systems that enable vibration, impairing the very skill that defines these insects. Climate change alters flowering times, creating mismatches between bee activity and plant readiness. Each of these factors threatens to break the delicate coordination that underpins buzz pollination. And because crops like tomatoes rely heavily on this system, human food security becomes entangled with the fate of bees. Protecting them is not only an act of conservation, but of self-interest. Watching a carpenter bee at work is to witness a fusion of biology and physics in miniature. The scene is deceptively simple: a bee clamped to a flower, shivering with energy, golden dust drifting into the air. Yet behind that moment lies a story of co-evolution, ecological interdependence, and the subtle exploitation of natural laws. The vibration that rattles loose pollen is the same principle that shakes the ground beneath an earthquake or vibrates strings into music. It is energy, tuned and focused, applied with precision by an insect that has never studied resonance, yet masters it instinctively. As the bee releases its grip and moves on, the flower is left changed. Its pollen has been dispersed, its role in reproduction fulfilled. Another flower will soon receive the dust carried on the bee's body, completing the cycle. For the carpenter bee, the work continues, flower after flower, vibration after vibration, an endless symphony of buzzing that sustains not only itself but whole systems of life. In the quiet of the meadow, when the louder noises of the world fade, that deep mechanical hum can still be heard. It is the sound of energy made visible, of pollen shaken free from stubborn anthers, of life multiplying in ways hidden from casual view. It is the voice of the carpenter bee, the vibration thief, transforming physics into survival, and in doing so, ensuring that fields, forests and farms remain alive with abundance. The midday sun presses down on the open plain, bleaching the sand to near white and driving waves of heat upward in a shimmering haze. To many creatures, this is a hostile landscape. The ground burns with temperatures that rise well above the air, and the glare overwhelms vision. Yet somewhere in this oven of light and heat, a small predator emerges, its metallic body flashing green, blue, or bronze in the sun. It is the tiger beetle, among the fastest hunters on 6 legs, a creature so quick that it outruns its own senses. The beetle stands poised on spindly legs, long and elevated, holding its body high above the scorching substrate. This posture is not just for elegance, it is survival. By lifting itself away from the sand, it reduces heat transfer from the ground, keeping its internal temperature just within the range of tolerance. Its legs act as stilts, spacing its body where airflow can carry heat away, a form of passive thermoregulation that allows hunting during times when most creatures retreat to shade. But even this strategy has limits. If the beetle lingers too long on open sand, the heat will overwhelm it. The tiger beetle must hunt in bursts, and in this need for speed, an entirely new problem arises. When the beetle accelerates, its speed becomes extraordinary. Scaled to its body size, it is one of the fastest animals alive. Certain species can sprint at more than 2 meters per second, the equivalent of a human running at more than 200 kilometers per hour. But with speed comes blindness. The beetle's eyes, large and faceted, gather information quickly, but not quickly enough to keep pace with its own movement. At top velocity, the world smears into darkness. For a fraction of each chase, the tiger beetle is effectively blind, moving forward without a clear image of its prey or surroundings. The solution is a hunting style unique among predators. The beetle does not run in a straight, uninterrupted pursuit. Instead, it sprints forward in a lightning burst, then halts abruptly, antennae braced like sensory rods, eyes taking in a fresh picture of the scene. In that pause, the prey comes back into focus, and the beetle recalibrates its direction. Then with another burst, it charges again. Sprint, stop, refresh, sprint again. A staccato rhythm of hunting dictated not by muscle but by the limitations of vision. This burst-stop-burst strategy turns a weakness into a functional method, allowing the beetle to pursue creatures far more agile than itself. On the sand ahead, a small ant scrambles, unaware of the hunter. The tiger beetle locks on. It launches forward, jaws gaping like scimitars, then freezes, head raised, compound eyes realigning. The ant darts sideways, but the beetle recalculates and surges again. The pursuit repeats in pulses until, with one final lunge, the beetle seizes the ant in its sickle-shaped mandibles. The jaws close with crushing force, cutting and holding at once, while digestive enzymes begin the process of breaking down tissues. The prey's frantic struggle ends within seconds. In the harsh emptiness of the dune, the beetle thrives on speed and the brutal efficiency of its weapons. Yet this is only one phase of its life. The tiger beetle larva inhabits a world utterly different from its sprinting adult form. While the adult dominates the surface as a chaser, the larva rules from beneath the sand as an ambusher. A larva burrows a vertical tunnel into the soil, sometimes as deep as 1/2 meter, lined with packed walls that hold firm against collapse. At the entrance, the larva positions its head flush with the surface, jaws spread wide, its armored body braced against the tunnel walls with a pair of hooks. This posture creates a living trapdoor. To a passing insect, the tunnel looks like nothing more than a dark patch on the sand. But when the victim steps close, the larva erupts upward with explosive speed, its curved mandibles snapping shut around the prey. In an instant, the victim is dragged down into the darkness, consumed underground where no predator can interfere. The dual strategies of the tiger beetle, sprinting hunter above, pit-trap ambusher below, represent two extremes of predation. One relies on speed beyond the limits of perception, while the other depends on patience and perfect camouflage. Few animals shift so completely between life stages, and yet this flexibility gives the beetle resilience. If drought or heat reduces surface prey, the larva remains safe below. If conditions favor abundance above ground, the adult takes over as one of the fastest killers of the open plain. Evolution has equipped both stages with tools finely tuned to their niche. The tiger beetle's success is not without competition. Birds hunt them from above, lizards stalk them across the sand, and parasitic wasps invade their burrows to lay eggs inside larvae. To survive these threats, tiger beetles rely on speed, cryptic coloration, and vigilance. Their metallic exoskeleton, while dazzling to human eyes, often blends with sunlit reflections, making them difficult to detect against glittering sand or stone. When pursued, they can take flight in short bursts, using wings as a backup escape plan. But even flight follows the same pattern: quick launches, short distances, abrupt landings, and recalibration. Physiologically, their speed comes with trade-offs. To power such sprints, their muscles consume oxygen at a furious rate, and their small bodies must dissipate heat quickly to avoid collapse. On cooler mornings, beetles bask briefly before moving, absorbing warmth to activate muscles. But by midday, the balance flips. Too much heat threatens function. The long legs then serve as vital radiators, spacing the body above the furnace of sand and allowing convective air currents to draw away excess warmth. This delicate thermal management explains why many tiger beetle hunts are short-lived, intense bursts punctuated by long pauses. Survival is as much about managing heat as it is about catching prey. The ecological role of tiger beetles stretches beyond their individual hunts. By preying on ants, flies, and other small invertebrates, they regulate populations that would otherwise swell unchecked. In agricultural landscapes, some species act as natural pest controllers, reducing outbreaks of herbivorous insects. At the same time, they are prey themselves, supporting higher predators in a food web that cycles energy from plant to herbivore to hunter. In this network, the tiger beetle is both predator and prey, both regulator and resource, a keystone of balance in fragile ecosystems. What makes the tiger beetle particularly fascinating is the way its biology exposes the limits of natural design. No other predator embodies the paradox of being too fast for its own senses. It highlights how evolution works not to create perfection, but to improvise around constraints. Instead of slowing down to match its vision, the beetle has embraced blindness, building a hunting style that turns pause into precision. Where we might see a flaw, nature has crafted a strategy. The burst-stop rhythm is not a weakness but a specialization, one that allows survival in the unforgiving openness of sand and soil. As the sun begins to fall toward the horizon, the beetle retreats into sparse vegetation or burrows to escape the cooling night. Its day of bursts and pauses, of blinding speed and frozen recalibration, comes to a close. But when dawn returns, shimmering again on the hot sands, the tiger beetle will emerge, legs poised like stilts, eyes scanning, jaws ready. It is a creature balanced between extremes, fast yet blind, fragile yet deadly, vulnerable yet dominant. The tiger beetle teaches us that survival is not about seamless perfection, but about adaptation at the edge of possibility. In its sprinting blindness, we glimpse the compromises of evolution. In its larval ambush, we see patience as effective as speed. And in its persistence across some of the harshest landscapes on Earth, we find a reminder that even the smallest creatures push against the boundaries of physics, living on a knife edge between what the body can do and what the world demands. On the edge of a sunlit leaf, no larger than a fingernail, sits one of nature's most improbable hunters. Its body is compact, its legs delicate compared to the swollen limbs of grasshoppers or the heavy joints of crabs. Yet within this small frame is a precision machine capable of feats that defy its size. This is the jumping spider, a creature that does not rely on webs or ambush pits, but instead uses hydraulic power and extraordinary vision to stalk and strike prey many times its own size. The spider remains motionless for a moment, the breeze shifting the leaf beneath it. At first, its body looks almost ornamental, a tiny fleck of velvet or iridescent sheen depending on the species. Then the camera tightens its focus, revealing the eyes. Of all its adaptations, these eyes are the most striking. The front pair dominate the face, two forward-facing spheres rimmed in metallic green or deep black, staring with an intensity that feels almost uncanny. Behind them, 6 smaller eyes curve across the head, each with a different function. Together, these 8 lenses grant the spider a panoramic command of its surroundings, a near 360-degree view stitched into a seamless understanding of motion, distance, and opportunity. Vision, however, is only part of the story. Unlike most spiders that sense prey through vibrations on silk, the jumping spider hunts by sight. Its large principal eyes provide acute resolution, allowing it to perceive shapes and even colors, a rare trait among arachnids. The smaller lateral eyes specialize in motion detection, constantly scanning for the slightest twitch. This division of labor gives the spider a kind of living radar. Wide-angle detection alerts it to movement, while the central eyes lock in with depth and clarity. For its scale, the resolution approaches that of much larger predators, enabling strategies that feel more like those of a cat than an insect. The hunt begins not with a leap, but with patience. The spider notices a fly that has landed on a nearby stem. It does not pounce immediately. Instead, it charts a path. Unlike predators driven by instinctive rushes, jumping spiders demonstrate remarkable foresight. Some have been observed walking away from prey, circling wide, and then approaching from an angle that offers a better line of attack. This detour strategy reveals a form of spatial planning. The spider can envision not only where the prey is, but how best to reach it. The choice to move away in order to approach is a sophistication that echoes the tactics of far larger hunters, like wolves or lions, scaled down to a creature only millimeters long. When the moment comes, the leap is sudden and astonishing. Unlike grasshoppers or fleas, which rely on muscular legs to store energy, the jumping spider harnesses hydraulics. Within its body, hemolymph, the spider's equivalent of blood, is rapidly pressurized. This surge of internal fluid extends the legs with explosive force, propelling the spider forward without the need for bulky thigh muscles. The result is a catapult launch that can cover distances up to many times the spider's body length in a fraction of a second. It is silent, swift, and devastatingly accurate. The leap is not reckless. Before it jumps, the spider attaches a silken tether to the surface behind it. This safety line ensures that if the jump fails, it will not fall to its death, but instead swing back and climb to safety. This single strand turns every leap into a calculated risk rather than a gamble, balancing bold predation with survival insurance. Evolution has given the spider not only the tools to launch, but also the foresight to safeguard its attempt. The fly, oblivious, cleans its wings on the stem. Then, in a blur, the spider strikes. It lands squarely on the prey, fangs piercing, venom flowing. The fly's struggles cease almost instantly as the spider injects digestive enzymes that liquefy tissues from within. Soon the predator feeds, sucking nourishment through straw-like mouthparts. The scene is brutal, yet efficient. For a creature of such small size, every successful kill represents not just a meal, but an extension of survival in an unforgiving world. Yet the hydraulic system that powers its leaps is not only about hunting. It is also a tool for exploration and escape. Jumping spiders leap across gaps in vegetation, bridging leaves and stems with ease. They can navigate three-dimensional landscapes where web builders would falter. The hydraulic mechanism also conserves energy by bypassing the limitations of muscle mass. By relying on pressure instead of pure tissue force, the spider maintains a compact body that remains agile and light, perfectly adapted to the dense microhabitats of forests, grasslands, and even deserts. Beyond hunting, vision again plays a central role in behavior. Jumping spiders are among the few arachnids known to perceive ultraviolet light, expanding their visual palette beyond human perception. This ability influences mate selection, as males of some species display iridescent patches that glow in ultraviolet patterns invisible to us, but radiant to their own kind. Courtship dances unfold on leaves, males raising legs, flashing colors, and vibrating abdomens in intricate rituals designed to convince females of their suitability. Here, vision is not merely for survival, but for reproduction, shaping the aesthetics of spider life in ways that echo the importance of plumage in birds or antlers in mammals. Ecologically, jumping spiders occupy a vital niche. They regulate populations of small insects, acting as silent guardians of plant communities. By preying on flies, aphids, and other herbivores, they indirectly protect foliage, contributing to the balance between vegetation and consumption. In turn, they themselves become prey for larger hunters, wasps that paralyze them for larvae, birds that pluck them from leaves, or mantises that stalk them in ambush. Their place in the food web is thus dual, controllers of smaller lives, sustenance for larger ones, a thread woven into the fabric of ecosystems across the globe. One of the most remarkable aspects of jumping spiders is their adaptability. They're not confined to a single habitat or climate. Species are found in rainforests, deserts, mountains, and even human dwellings. Their reliance on vision and leaps rather than webs gives them freedom to exploit niches denied to other arachnids. In deserts, they hunt on sun-baked stones, their small size insulating them from lethal heat spikes. In tropical canopies, they navigate a labyrinth of leaves, their leaps bridging spaces far larger than their bodies. Even in urban settings, they stalk flies and mosquitoes along walls and windowsills, miniature predators thriving in the company of humans. The combination of vision, planning, and hydraulic propulsion has led some researchers to suggest cognitive complexity beyond what is typical for creatures of their scale. Experiments show that jumping spiders can remember prey positions even when temporarily hidden, implying short-term memory and problem-solving capacity. For a creature with a brain smaller than a grain of sand, this is extraordinary. It demonstrates that intelligence, in evolutionary terms, is not always a matter of size, but of necessity. To hunt with precision using sight, to plan routes, and to calibrate leaps requires more than reflex. It requires processing, however rudimentary, that shapes behavior in ways surprisingly advanced. As the sun tilts lower and shadows stretch across the forest floor, the spider retreats to a silken retreat spun under a leaf or bark crevice. It seals itself inside, safe from nocturnal predators, conserving energy for the next day. Its world is one of bursts of motion and long intervals of stillness, of planning and execution, of hydraulic surges that turn quiet poise into sudden violence. In every aspect, it embodies a lesson that power does not always come from size, but from precision and adaptability. The jumping spider is a paradox, small but commanding, delicate but deadly, simple in body yet complex in behavior. Through its eyes, we glimpse the miniature universe of leaves and stems, not as static scenery, but as arenas of pursuit and survival. Through its leaps, we see how evolution finds ingenious solutions to the constraints of muscle and scale. And through its planning, we realize that even the tiniest hunter can wield foresight, shaping its environment not with webs or weapons, but with the union of vision and hydraulic force. In this way, the jumping spider stands as one of nature's quiet marvels, a hydraulic engineer, a strategist, and a predator that redefines what it means to see and to act in a world measured not in miles, but in millimeters. The forest floor is alive with movement. Between leaves, roots, and fallen branches, a column of red ants threads its way forward, each individual carrying more than its share of weight. To the human eye, the stream looks chaotic, but to the colony it is order in motion, a living river of bodies moving with one purpose, guided by chemical trails invisible to us but as clear to them as painted lines on a highway. Ants are often described as instinct-driven automatons, but such a description overlooks the sophistication of their collective behaviors. When faced with obstacles that break the flow of their foraging trails, these small insects transform themselves into engineers. They build bridges, not from branches or stones, but from their own interlocked bodies. At the edge of a gap, perhaps a fissure in bark, a missing step between twigs, or a void cut into soil by erosion, the lead workers do not hesitate. They grip the far side with mandibles, anchor themselves in place, and allow their bodies to form the first span. Others climb onto them, linking legs and jaws, weaving into a chain. The process accelerates as more ants arrive, the living chain thickening into a suspension bridge of chitin and muscle. Soon the column begins to cross, their tiny feet pattering across the backs of their sisters. The bridge flexes with weight, but does not collapse. Every ant in the structure continually adjusts, tightening grips or repositioning to balance strain. What looks like a solid structure is in fact a dynamic network, constantly reconfigured by feedback from touch and strain, an emergent solution to a problem no single ant understands, but the colony solves collectively. These living bridges are not built haphazardly. Studies show that ants optimize the length of a bridge by balancing efficiency with cost. A shorter detour on solid ground may be faster than a long bridge, so the colony chooses the configuration that maximizes foraging success while minimizing the number of workers tied up as structural components. This is decision-making on the level of the superorganism. No ant sees the whole picture, but through the sum of their actions, the colony behaves as though it calculates trade-offs, evaluating time and resource allocation. Evolution has refined not only the physical capacity of ants to link together, but also the behavioral algorithms that guide when and how they should deploy themselves as architecture. If bridges showcase the colony's ability to turn themselves into roads, floods reveal an even more astonishing transformation. In regions where seasonal rains transform the forest floor into temporary rivers, red ants face a lethal problem. Their nests and trails, normally grounded in soil, can be swept away in minutes. But rather than perish, the ants weave their bodies into rafts that float. The process begins with workers gripping each other tightly, mandibles locking into legs, legs hooking into abdomens, forming a tightly packed mat. As more ants join, the structure thickens, curving upward at the edges into a buoyant raft. In the center, the most vulnerable members of the colony, the queen and brood, are carefully placed, shielded by layers of workers. Scouts patrol the edges, clinging tightly as water surges against the mass. The raft is waterproof not by chance, but by design. Each ant's exoskeleton is coated in a hydrophobic layer that repels water. When thousands of bodies interlock, tiny pockets of air become trapped between them, acting like life jackets. The The surface tension of water combines with the hydrophobic cuticles to prevent sinking, while the raft's elasticity allows it to flex with waves. To the observer, it looks like a single organism, pulsing and shifting as it drifts. But beneath that illusion is a community of thousands, each individual contributing its life to the survival of the whole. Remarkably, these rafts are not passive. As currents shift, ants on the edges disassemble and rebuild the structure, redistributing themselves to maintain balance and prevent the raft from tearing apart. This constant repair is guided not by command, but by local cues. Ants respond to the pull of water, the tension of neighboring bodies, and the flow of chemical signals. Scouts may even leave the raft temporarily, swimming ahead to locate potential landing sites, then return to guide the mass towards safety. This collective navigation turns an otherwise hopeless drift into purposeful migration. Physics and biology converge in this survival strategy. The colony exploits principles of hydrophobicity, surface tension, and buoyancy with a sophistication rivaling human engineering. Where humans design boats with sealed hulls and air-filled compartments, ants rely on the waterproofing of their cuticles and the air bubbles trapped in their latticework. The raft remains afloat for weeks if necessary, allowing the colony to outlast floods that would wipe out less adaptable species. When the waters recede, the ants disassemble their living vessel and rebuild their nest, continuing as though nothing extraordinary had occurred. The ecological implications of these behaviors are profound. Red ants are ecosystem engineers, altering their surroundings not only by building nests, but also by bridging gaps and rafting rivers. In doing so, they expand their foraging range, connect fragmented habitats, and maintain continuity in the face of disruption. Their resilience allows them to dominate landscapes where other insects fail, giving them an outsized influence on plant pollination, seed dispersal, and nutrient cycling. The colony's survival strategies ripple outward into the broader ecosystem, shaping the lives of plants, animals, and microbes alike. Predators, however, are not absent from this story. Birds swoop to snatch ants from exposed bridges. Fish rise from beneath rafts, biting into the writhing mass. Even larger arthropods attempt raids on weakened structures. Yet the colony endures. The sacrifice of a few individuals does not compromise the whole. Indeed, such expendability is built into the logic of eusocial life. By investing in the survival of the queen and brood, workers ensure the continuity of their genetic lineage, even if thousands perish. The raft and bridge, then, are monuments not to the strength of individuals, but to the resilience of collective life. There is irony here, too. What appears to us as genius design is the product of simple rules repeated at scale. An ant grips when touched on one side, lets go when pulled from another, responds to pheromones laid by her neighbors. No ant imagines herself part of a bridge, and none knows she is part of a raft. Yet together they become structures that span gaps and ride rivers. The intelligence lies not in the brain of a worker, but in the interactions between thousands of them, a reminder that complexity often arises from simplicity multiplied. As the floodwaters recede and the raft drifts toward a muddy bank, the ants surge forward, climbing ashore in a wave. Scouts spread, searching for high ground. Workers scatter to gather soil, leaves, and twigs for rebuilding. Within hours, the colony is entrenched again, a fortress beneath the earth. The queen is secured, the brood tended, and the cycle continues. For us, such upheaval would mean disaster. For the red ant colony, it is routine, another chapter in a life lived at the mercy of elements, yet always adapted to endure. The story of red ants teaches us that survival is rarely about strength in isolation. It is about cooperation, about harnessing the laws of physics through collective behavior. Bridges and rafts are not just tools for crossing or floating, they are manifestations of a society where the boundary between individual and group blurs. The colony itself becomes the organism, capable of reshaping itself into whatever form the environment demands. In that transformation, we glimpse the raw ingenuity of evolution, a creativity written not in conscious design, but in generations of trial, error, and persistence. As the forest quiets after the rains, the trails of ants once again thread across roots and leaves. They move with the same restless purpose as before, yet within them resides the memory of floods endured and rivers crossed on living boats. To watch them is to witness an architecture of flesh and will, an alliance between biology and physics that ensures survival against odds. And in their bridges and rafts, we see a truth that resonates far beyond the insect world, that unity, when finely tuned, can conquer obstacles no individual could face alone. The air thickens with heat as the sun climbs to its zenith. Leaves sag in stillness, branches hang heavy, and the ground radiates warmth upward in shimmering waves. Then, without warning, the silence is shattered. A chorus erupts from the trees, a vibration that rolls like thunder, yet originates not from storm clouds, but from countless small bodies clinging to bark. This is the cicada's domain, a soundscape so powerful that it can drown the voices of birds, silence the rustle of wind, and turn the forest into a pulsing chamber of resonance. Each call begins with a snap, a contraction of specialized membranes known as tymbals. Located along the sides of the abdomen, these tymbals buckle inward with muscular force and then spring back outward. Every contraction produces a sharp click, and when repeated in rapid succession, the clicks merge into a steady, high-pitched buzz. But it is not the tymbal alone that creates the spectacle. The cicada's abdomen is hollow, a living, resonating chamber lined with thin cuticle walls that amplify and project sound. This hollow body functions like a drum, turning modest muscle contractions into calls that can reach over 100 decibels, a level comparable to heavy machinery, yet produced by an insect scarcely larger than a thumb. To grasp the magnitude of this achievement, consider the physics. Sound intensity depends not only on the energy applied, but on resonance, the reinforcement of waves within a chamber. The cicada's abdominal cavity is tuned to specific frequencies, amplifying its own output. Just as violins and trumpets rely on the shape of wood or brass to enrich their tones, the cicada exploits its anatomy as an instrument. Males slam timbal after timbal, and the abdomen magnifies each pulse into a cannonade that reverberates through the forest. For their body size, cicadas are among the loudest animals on Earth, rivaling even howler monkeys or whales when scaled proportionally. But loudness is not vanity, it is survival in the evolutionary theater of reproduction. The calls are mating songs, each species producing its own rhythm and pitch to attract females of the same kind. In regions where multiple species emerge together, this differentiation becomes crucial, preventing confusion and hybridization. Females respond not with calls of their own, but with subtle wing flicks or shifts of position, signaling readiness to mate. For males, the competition is fierce. The loudest and most persistent callers dominate the soundscape, hoping to draw mates before predators silence them. Predators indeed are drawn to the noise. Birds and bats hunt cicadas relentlessly during emergencies, homing in on the very calls that males cannot stop producing. Spiders build webs near calling sites, exploiting the density of prey. Even mammals such as raccoons and foxes feast during the height of cicada season. To survive this gauntlet, cicadas rely on sheer numbers. Their strategy is one of predator satiation. By emerging in staggering quantities, they overwhelm enemies with more food than can possibly be consumed. While thousands perish, thousands more slip through, ensuring the continuation of the species. The emergence itself is a wonder of timing. Many cicadas live underground as nymphs for years, in some cases 13 or 17 years, feeding on the xylem sap of roots. Then, synchronously, they rise to the surface, climb tree trunks, and shed their exoskeletons in a final molt. Within hours, the forest is covered with shells, split down the back like abandoned armor. Adults harden their wings and join the chorus. The sudden flood of bodies and sound transforms ecosystems, fueling food webs from soil to canopy. Yet the cicada's defenses are not limited to sound and numbers. Their wings carry another secret, a microscopic arsenal invisible to the naked eye. When examined under magnification, the surface of cicada wings reveals an array of nanopillars, tiny spikes spaced at intervals smaller than a bacterium. These structures do not kill with poison or mechanical crushing. Instead, they exploit the physics of surface tension at the cellular scale. When bacteria land on the wing, their membranes stretch across the spikes. The tension forces the cell walls to rupture, punctured and torn by the sharpness of structures only nanometers tall. In this way, cicada wings maintain a sterile surface without chemicals, a passive antimicrobial defense honed by evolution. This adaptation has profound implications. During mass emergencies, when millions of cicadas cluster together, the risk of disease skyrockets. Pathogens could sweep through the population, thriving in dense gatherings of bodies. The nanostructures of wings reduce this risk, suppressing microbial growth and keeping individuals healthier during critical reproductive windows. What seems like a trivial detail of wing texture is in fact a life-saving adaptation, reducing vulnerability at the very moment when survival is most precarious. Scientists studying these nanostructures have drawn inspiration for human technology. Materials designed to mimic cicada wings show promise in medical devices, hospital surfaces, and water filters where antimicrobial properties are vital. The insect solution, discovered through natural selection, becomes a model for bioengineering, bridging the gap between ecology and innovation. Cicadas thus contribute not only to ecosystems but indirectly to human progress, their microscopic defenses sparking ideas that may one day save lives. In ecological terms, cicadas play multiple roles. As nymphs underground, they aerate soil with their burrows, cycling nutrients and improving water infiltration. When they emerge, their sheer biomass feeds countless predators. After mating, when adults die en masse, their bodies enrich the soil with nitrogen, fueling plant growth. Entire forests pulse with this nutrient subsidy, tree rings showing measurable growth spurts in years following major emergencies. In this way, cicadas are not merely seasonal curiosities, but fundamental drivers of ecosystem cycles, their rhythms etched into the biology of plants and animals alike. There is also a subtle irony in their fame. To many humans, cicadas are remembered for their noise, deafening, relentless, and sometimes irritating. Yet beneath that surface annoyance lies one of the most elegant demonstrations of how evolution balances cost and reward. The call that draws mates also draws predators. The density that ensures reproduction also risks disease. The solution is not perfection, but compromise. Sound cannons paired with microbial armor, vulnerability offset by abundance. In this delicate equation, cicadas persist across millennia, their life cycles synchronized with prime numbers that defy easy prediction, minimizing overlap with predator population booms. As the afternoon wears on, the chorus ebbs and flows, waves of sound cascading through valleys and ridges. The forest vibrates with a living pulse, a reminder that biology is not always quiet or discreet. Sometimes survival shouts. Beneath the drone, wings shimmer in sunlight, their nanoblades invisible but lethal to microbes. Males continue their desperate songs, each click of the timbrel a gamble that reproduction will come before predation. By evening, the air cools and the chorus softens. Shadows stretch across the ground, and the calls blend into the background hum of crickets and frogs. Yet tomorrow and the day after, and for as long as the emergence lasts, the forest will resound again. The cicadas will call, the predators will feed, and the cycle will unfold, as it has for countless generations. The cicada embodies contradiction, fragile yet overwhelming, noisy yet purposeful, vulnerable yet resilient. Its body is both instrument and weapon, amplifier and shield. In the timbrel, we hear the raw power of physics, harnessed for reproduction. In the wing, we see the invisible blades that keep disease at bay. And in the synchronized flood of bodies, we witness a survival strategy that turns abundance itself into protection. To stand in a forest filled with cicadas is to feel evolution not as theory but as vibration, a resonance that shakes branches, penetrates bone, and leaves memory long after the insects themselves fall silent. Their legacy endures not only in the genes of the next generation, but in the forests nourished by their bodies, the predators sustained by their emergence, and the human technologies inspired by their microscopic defenses. The cicada, with its sound cannons and nanoblades, is both singer and engineer, shaping ecosystems with the rhythm of its life and the resonance of its call. The morning begins cool, the air still heavy with night. In a meadow, wildflowers tilt their faces toward the rising sun. Dew clings to each petal, trembling as the light strengthens. Then, with a tremor of orange and black wings, the monarch butterfly takes to the air. It is delicate in appearance, fragile enough to seem at the mercy of wind, and yet this small insect is about to embark on one of the longest and most extraordinary journeys in the animal kingdom. What gives the monarch its place in natural history is not simply its beauty, but its ability to navigate a continent with precision, guided by a clock compass system built into its brain. To understand the scale of this achievement, picture the geography. Monarchs that hatch in late summer across the northern United States and southern Canada do not remain where they are born. Instead, they undertake a migration of thousands of kilometers, traveling all the way to the mountain forests of central Mexico. No single individual makes the full round trip. Each leg of the journey belongs to a different generation, a baton passed from parents to offspring. The population, not the individual, is the migrant, yet each butterfly flies as though it carries a map written into its tissues. The key lies in their sense of time and orientation. Many animals use the sun as a compass, but the sun moves across the sky, shifting position hour by hour. To navigate accurately, a traveler must not only know where the sun is, but also adjust for how far it has moved since morning. Monarchs solve this with a time-compensated compass. In their brains, clusters of neurons form a circadian clock that keeps track of the time of day. This clock works in concert with photoreceptors that register the sun's angle, allowing the butterfly to correct its orientation constantly. The result is a guidance system that points the monarch southwest in autumn and northeast in spring, always compensating for the sun's motion. Yet the compass does not rely on the sun alone. Monarchs also carry a backup. Within their tissues are cryptochromes, light-sensitive proteins that respond to Earth's magnetic field. These proteins, activated by blue light, may allow monarchs to detect magnetic inclination, providing a secondary guide when the sky is obscured by cloud or when they fly at night. Though not yet fully understood, this magnetic sense likely works in tandem with the sun compass, giving redundancy to a system where error would mean death. As they travel, monarchs face the challenge of energy. Their bodies are small, their wings delicate, and their fuel reserves limited. To succeed, they must load fat stores before departure. In the weeks before migration, they feed voraciously on nectar, converting sugars into lipids that pack into abdominal tissues. These reserves sustain them through weeks of flight when flowers may be scarce. Their metabolism is tuned to maximize efficiency, conserving resources while covering great distances. Altitude is another decision point. Monarchs do not always fly low above the ground. Instead, they exploit atmospheric conditions. On cool mornings, they may rise on thermals, spiraling upward into currents that carry them without effort. Once aloft, they glide for kilometers, saving energy that would otherwise be spent in beating wings. Cold fronts can act like conveyor belts, pushing them forward across entire states. To the casual observer, a butterfly drifting in the breeze seems passive, but the monarch is in fact a skilled aviator, adjusting height, angle, and timing to transform weather into a highway. The journey is not without cost. Predators such as birds and wasps take their share, though monarchs are defended by the toxins they accumulate from milkweed, their larval host plant. The bright orange of their wings serves as a warning, a signal of unpalatability that most predators learn quickly. Yet even with this chemical armor, the migration is perilous. Storms, droughts, and habitat loss reduce numbers drastically. Only a fraction of those that leave the north will ever reach the mountain Oyamel fir forests of Mexico, where the survivors cluster in the millions, blanketing trunks and branches in living drapery. There, in the high-altitude sanctuaries, the monarchs enter a state of suspended animation. Cool temperatures slow their metabolism, stretching their fat reserves through winter. When spring arrives, they rouse, mate, and begin the journey northward again. Eggs are laid on fresh milkweed, and the next generation takes up the flight. Step by step, over multiple generations, the population retraces its path, reaching the northern breeding grounds once more. The ecological significance of this migration extends beyond the butterflies themselves. Monarchs pollinate as they feed, supporting plant reproduction across thousands of kilometers. Their bodies feed predators despite their toxicity. Some birds and mice have evolved partial resistance. The nutrients they carry become part of broader food webs. When they arrive in Mexico, their presence fuels tourism, drawing people from around the world to witness the spectacle. Their disappearance, in turn, would ripple across ecosystems and economies alike. The timing of migration is tightly linked to environmental cues. Day length, temperature, and host plant conditions trigger the physiological state known as diapause, in which monarchs delay reproduction in favor of migration. Without diapause, the butterflies would attempt to breed and die before completing their journey. With it, they conserve energy, postpone mating, and commit to travel. This switch, controlled by hormones, is one of the most remarkable examples of environmental programming in insects, a life history strategy aligned with planetary cycles. Researchers have traced the neural circuits of monarch navigation, identifying clock neurons in the brain and photoreceptors in the eyes that send signals to steering muscles in the wings. What seems like effortless drifting is in fact the product of constant calculation, adjustments measured in milliseconds. The monarch is not a passive passenger, but an active pilot, guided by systems of extraordinary precision evolved to solve the puzzle of continental migration. And yet, the monarch's success is fragile. Habitat loss in both breeding and overwintering grounds has pushed populations into decline. Milkweed, the sole host for monarch larvae, has been reduced by agriculture and herbicides. Logging threatens the fir forests of Mexico. Climate change alters wind patterns, disrupts thermal currents, and desynchronizes the timing of flowering plants with migration. The clock compass that once matched perfectly with the environment now faces a shifting baseline, testing the adaptability of the species. Still, the monarch's journey continues. Each autumn, skies across the Midwest shimmer with orange wings. Highways and cities fall beneath them as they glide overhead, unnoticed by many, but unerring in their direction. The same clock, the same compass, the same magnetic whispers guide them as they have for thousands of years. To watch a monarch in flight is to witness not fragility, but resilience, a small insect balancing the forces of biology and physics to right one of the most extraordinary migrations on Earth. The monarch butterfly is more than a symbol of transformation from caterpillar to winged adult. It is a symbol of endurance, of navigation through uncertainty, of the power of collective generations to achieve what no individual could. Its clock compass system, correcting constantly for the sun's passage, and its likely magnetic backup, reveal a sophistication that challenges assumptions about insect simplicity. Its fat reserves, altitude shifts, and exploitation of weather show a mastery of energy and environment. And its arrival, year after year, at the same mountain groves, is a reminder that evolution can engrave maps not on parchment, but in neurons, proteins, and instincts. To stand in a Mexican forest when millions of monarchs descend is to feel the weight of this truth. Branches bend under the density of wings. The air itself seems filled with living confetti, orange and black fragments drifting, rising, and settling. When the sun strikes them, the forest ignites with color and movement. Yet behind the beauty lies precision, discipline, and survival, the quiet genius of a clock and a compass, guiding fragile bodies across a continent, generation after generation. The midday air quivers with heat, and the grasses of the savannah shift like green gold waves under the weight of the wind. Somewhere within this dense cover, a giant grasshopper rests, its patterned body blending almost seamlessly with the stalks around it. To the casual eye, it is invisible, a streak of brown, green, or mottled tan concealed among the blades. Yet the stillness is an illusion. Within its long hind legs, energy is coiled, stored in the springy tissues of its joints, ready to be unleashed in an instant. For the grasshopper, survival depends not on armor or venom, but on the physics of stored energy, the snap of a latch, and the explosive release of a jump. The secret lies in a protein known as resilin. This material, found in the cuticle of the grasshopper's hind legs, is one of the most elastic substances in the natural world. When compressed, resilin stores mechanical energy with almost no loss, much like a perfect rubber band. Muscles alone could never generate the instantaneous force required to launch the insect into the air at the speeds it achieves. Instead, the muscles work more slowly, bending the leg and loading tension into resilin-rich pads. It is a process of preparation, a winding of the spring. At the final moment, a tiny latch, a joint mechanism that locks the leg in place, releases. In a fraction of a millisecond, the stored energy fires, propelling the grasshopper forward and upward in a blur too fast for most predators to intercept. The result is astonishing. Some species can leap 20 times their own body length in a single bound. For a human, this would be the equivalent of clearing an entire football field in one stride. The launch accelerates the grasshopper at forces many times greater than gravity, yet the insect's lightweight body and strong exoskeleton absorb the shock without injury. To the predator, whether a lizard, bird, or small mammal, the prey has vanished, replaced by empty grass. To the human observer, even high-speed cameras struggle to capture the exact moment of release. But the jump is more than a vertical escape. It is a flight with direction and precision. Once airborne, the grasshopper swings its wings into action, not for sustained flight like a butterfly or dragonfly, but as steering surfaces. By adjusting wing strokes and body angles, it guides its trajectory across the landscape, landing where safety is more likely. Some leaps carry the insect only a few meters. Others, if aided by wind and angle, can stretch far longer. This union of spring-loaded legs and wing steering makes the grasshopper not only hard to catch, but also unpredictable, a flashing projectile that seems to ricochet across fields. There is strategy, too, in the angle of takeoff. When chased, grasshoppers do not always leap for maximum distance. A heavy meal in the gut reduces range, and the additional mass makes high, long leaps riskier. Instead, many choose launch angles that prioritize clearing the immediate strike of a predator rather than maximizing total distance. Evolution has shaped not only the hardware of their jumps, but the decision-making that underlies them. It is not about how far they go, but about surviving the first attack, creating enough space to vanish into cover. For predators, this unpredictability can be maddening. Birds strike at the spot where the grasshopper seemed to be, only to find empty air. Lizards lunge, jaws snapping, but hit nothing as the insect arcs away. Even humans trying to catch grasshoppers by hand often fail, the quarry vaulting suddenly in a direction opposite to the expected path. The physics of latch fire gives the grasshopper an advantage far beyond what its small size might suggest. Yet the grasshopper's leap is not only a tool of escape, it is also a vehicle of dispersal. By hopping across landscapes, these insects expand their feeding range, colonizing new patches of vegetation. In doing so, they act as both consumers and prey, shaping plant communities and sustaining food webs. A single grasshopper may seem trivial, but swarms can consume vegetation at astonishing rates, stripping fields and forcing predators to shift diets. The power of the leap, multiplied across millions of individuals, reshapes ecosystems. At rest, the giant grasshopper seems almost placid, nibbling leaves with its strong mandibles, antennae flicking at scents on the wind. But beneath this calm lies an engine of tension. Each hind leg is cocked like a crossbow, flexors and extensors in a constant negotiation, ready to load and fire. The insect must balance energy expenditure with vigilance. Too many false leaps waste reserves, but hesitation can mean death. In this balance lies the rhythm of its existence. Graze, watch, coil, and leap. The biomechanics of the system have fascinated scientists for decades. High-speed recordings reveal the intricate coordination of muscles, tendons, and resilin pads. The latch mechanism, though tiny, is precise, ensuring that energy is not released prematurely. In fact, the delay between muscle contraction and leg extension is crucial. Without the latch, the muscles alone would push too slowly, and the grasshopper would never leave the ground in time. With the latch, The stored energy releases all at once, a biological catapult that pushes the limits of physics at insect scale. This design has inspired engineers and roboticists who study how to build machines that can store and release energy with efficiency. Bio-inspired robots modeled on grasshopper jumps may one day explore rough terrain, leap over obstacles, or navigate environments where wheels or wings would fail. Once again, what evolution crafted for survival becomes a blueprint for human innovation. Still, for the grasshopper, the stakes are immediate and unforgiving. A late jump means capture. A poorly chosen landing site can expose it to another predator. Even success is temporary. Every leap simply buys more time in a world where threats are constant. Some species enhance their odds with cryptic coloration, blending into bark, soil, or foliage, so that their jumps begin with surprise. Others flash bright hind wings during flight, startling predators, only to vanish when the wings fold again upon landing. Deception and physics combine to turn the simple act of jumping into a layered defense. Grasshoppers are not without vulnerabilities. Heavy rains can saturate the soil and ground their leaps. Cold temperatures slow muscle contractions, reducing the speed at which energy can be loaded. Parasitoid wasps lay eggs within their bodies, larvae consuming them from the inside out. For all their power, they remain part of the larger cycle, prey and predator entwined. Their resilience lies not in invulnerability, but in abundance, in numbers that ensure species survival even when individuals fall. As evening approaches and the air cools, the activity of grasshoppers slows. They climb higher onto stalks, wings tucked, bodies angled to catch the last warmth of the sun. The leaps become less frequent, energy conserved until morning. But the potential remains coiled within their legs, a silent readiness that defines their existence. At any moment, the spring can fire, and the insect can vanish in a blur of motion that outpaces both predator and camera. The giant grasshopper embodies the principle that survival often depends not on size or strength, but on timing, energy, and the ingenious use of physics. Its resilient springs and latch fire mechanism transform vulnerability into escape, turning fragile bodies into projectiles of improbable power. Its leaps shape not only its own survival, but the dynamics of fields, predators, and even human agriculture. To watch one launch from the grass is to witness more than an insect in flight. It is to see energy stored and released with near perfection, evolution's engineering at its most elegant. In the arc of its body, in the whir of its wings, in the physics of its trajectory, the grasshopper reveals how life, even at its smallest scales, pushes against the boundaries of what seems possible, one leap at a time.